Welcome to the Wolfkeeper, a show that's just about everything that you can maybe think about, everything that you can feel that's inside of your heart. What I need for you to do right now is spend the next hour relaxing. Just stop your day before you go into 12 o'clock. And I just want y'all to close your minds, open your hearts, and relax and go on this journey with me. It's a beautiful place that you're about to go, because I want to make you feel, I want to just open you up and think about some things you never really thought about right now. The Wolfkeeper. Come on. Good morning, y'all. Come on. It's the Wolfkeeper show. Get ready. Come on, let's go. Yeah. Woo. Yeah. It's the Wolfkeeper show. Your boy Toriano Sanzoni. Yeah. Chanelli Nell. My boy Tyrone Scott somewhere rocking the Doogie Dogs. Denzel's in his house. Shacky Shack. And for all the people out there that love us, we love you back. Thank you all. Get ready for an amazing show with the Wolfkeeper. Get ready. Here we go.
And that's what happened with her. But to make matters worse, at that point in time, we lived in a little cabin in the Hollywood Hills that was literally 110 railroad tie steps from the car to the house up the hill. So having close to a 100-pound dog that couldn't move and having her to get down those steps, it was just really a daunting task. So fortunately, I developed a good relationship with my veterinarian who, although he didn't make house calls, he did send a vet tech to our house. We got Sunny on a stretcher, and after surgery, she bounced back to her fun-loving self. But I just never again wanted to be put in a situation where my furry child was injured and I didn't know what to do.
Wow. Now,
I just jumped on the bandwagon and have been learning ever since.
I've taken so many notes on you. So these are all Denise notes. I'm not even sure if I can get through all 6 pages of Denise notes. But one thing I didn't see on your prior life, are you medical at all? Are you a nurse? Are you like scout? How did you?
Yeah, well, I certainly was a scout, but the funny thing about this, and I don't know if I've ever told this in an interview before, but when I was in Girl Scouts, I actually fainted when we were talking about bleeding. So it's so ironic. I mean, I hit the floor. There were some other circumstances involved. It was a hot day. I hadn't eaten, but just the graphic images that were summoned up in the brain literally made me pass out. So decades later, it's kind of funny that I got on this path where I'm teaching this for animals, and I just been learning on the fly. Like I said, it's my second career, and when I dove into it with two hands and 2 feet. I wish I could say 4 paws, but I don't completely possess those. I just always live with them.
You dived in
I've
deep.
just been learning for the last 20 years everything I could, and taking seminars and training and doing jobs of rescue work, so I get the hand-on experience too. Because sometimes things look good on the page, but when you've got a moving injured animal, you got to figure out a practical way to do things.
So let me ask you this. So I'm just super curious about this. 20,000 plus animal lovers that you've helped. I just in my 20 years, we're both veterans. I can think of tons of just horrific things that are, oh my God. What's one of your top stories?
Well, one of the first stories that came to me that made such an impact was a lady named Shirley in Ventura, California. And she had a 9-year-old Doberman named Rocco. And Shirley had taken my pet first aid class just knowing she had a senior dog and wanting to be prepared. Well, lo and behold, a few weeks after taking the class, I heard back from her, because what had happened is she and Rocco used to jog along the beach every Sunday morning. And this particular Sunday morning when they got home, Rocco collapsed on the driveway.
Oh no.
Well, Shirley, took the deep breath that I always tell everybody to do,
Right.
process that adrenaline rush so you can really help the pet.
Okay.
And then she dropped to her knees and realized he wasn't breathing. So she started some rescue breaths, and Rocco very quickly started to cough and pant.
Wow.
But then he quickly, his lungs stopped again very quickly, and his heart followed as well.
Wow.
So she began both the rescue breathing and the chest compressions. You can imagine her own dog, this just happened. She's not glued to a stopwatch or anything, but she thinks she did it for about 3 minutes, which is suggested. And Rocco actually came alert. I mean, he didn't jump up, but I mean, he came, he started breathing on his own, and his heart started beating on his own. And as I would always instruct, I say, get quickly to medical help, because CPR, whether it's for a human or a person, CPR isn't a cure. By doing CPR, you're just being the pump that heart and lungs can't be at that moment in time, but you haven't fixed whatever caused it to stop. So she got the dog to the vet. They kept him there for observation for the day. And that evening, he was able to come home on meds. They diagnosed him with a heart murmur. And when Shirley got him home, she just collapsed on her sofa, from the trauma of the day, just, flipped on some mindless television. And out of the corner of her eye, she looked, and there was Rocco parading up and down the hall with a pair of her socks in his mouth, having the time of his life. This was a dog she could have lost that morning if she didn't know what to do. Because that's what CPR is all about. It's about keeping those organs and tissues viable, keeping that blood and oxygen circulating until you can get a vet. The vet hopefully can, give the antidote for poison, stop internal bleeding, cure a disease. We can't do that as pet parents or just, first responders. But if we can keep that animal breathing, even, artificially with our help and their heart pumping, then those veterinarians who have gone through all of this schooling have a chance to put their expertise to use.
Now, your resume is so intense. You've done so much. You worked with so many people. How are you? I mean, you have to almost know more than the Red Cross Pet Care CPR. So how do you feel about what they're doing versus what you're doing? Because obviously you're not taking their class. You have your own thing going on.
I do. I mean, I always, especially in my earlier years, I took courses from a lot of places, from the Humane Society, from American Humane, from a lot of veterinarians. And I'm really actually thrilled now that a lot of veterinarians have asked me to speak alongside of them, and actually to even train some of their office staff in some basic things like, we're talking about all these life-saving things, but one of the things I spend a lot of emphasis on is teaching the head-to-tail checkup. It's something you can do with your dog every week. And it's a way to find a problem early when it's small.
Right.
And, you know, that's, you know, a really important thing that everybody can even do today without, you know, reading anything more, without taking a class. I mean, there's certainly a lot of things I can teach you to look for, but if you just sit down and have some good bonding time with your dog when you're in a good mood, not when you've just gotten off that phone call that aggravated you, but when you're in a good mood, and really just feel him to head to toe, get familiar with his body so that you can find a lump early, so that you can find a tick, you can find a foxtail, or, you know, anything that isn't quite right, and then seek attention. That is such an important thing. But yes, to answer your question, obviously, you know, courses vary from, you know, different companies, but I just, you know, really try to make sure that my students get as much as I know out of it, and without keeping them for 10 days, you know, in a class. But, you know, I have different levels of classes where they can get even more skills. But, you know, I think it's great for students to at least get very basic skills. And I really do try to keep up with the American Veterinary Medical Association and others, so that whatever I'm teaching is the latest protocol. CPR, for instance, changed in the last 3 or 4 years. And maybe I shouldn't say changed, it was enhanced. So you just always want to make sure when you take a class that whoever's teaching it is giving you the latest information, because like in any field, there are improvements, and you want to make sure you're on the cutting edge for your canine best pal.
And you're, I mean, so I like what you just pointed out, because you basically want to do a doggy body inspection right before it gets to that point. Because sometimes I see clients are like, oh my God, what's this huge thing that's like protruding under your belly, or they just physically aren't touching their dogs, and these things that could be preventative. Where's the best place, and we'll mention this a few times, but where can people find you online? And because I want people to know what's the best place.
Certainly at PetSafetyCrusader.com. PETSAFETY Crusader. CRUSADER.com. And one thing I want to add to that, Toriano, is not only is it great that when you do the body inspection, the head to tail, the snout to tail, whatever you want to call it, that you're going to find something early, but it really helps your dog get used to the human touch and makes him such a much better patient at the veterinarian or the groomer, or when other people meet him. So it's really, you know, does a lot of stuff for your dog.
And right now, a lot of dogs are going through different, you know, stresses due to COVID, due to this global racial pandemic that's going on, due to this depression. I mean, there's a lot going on in the world. I always said dogs are the final manifestation of what's going on in your life. What you're feeling, your dog is definitely feeling too. So with that said, what could you recommend to people that dogs might be going through, like different depressions or different things right now, or this energy because the owner is depressed, the owner is stressed out, which can carry over to the dog, which can lead into, as you said, your dog had a heart murmur. I mean, my dog, Diesel, had a stroke, which I didn't even know dogs could have strokes. But obviously stress creates other physical ailments in humans and in dogs. But what are some preventive things right now?
Well, that's it. I know some people get on, different people's cases saying, dogs aren't, human beings, but they really are sentient creatures. They're feeling, and I think more than so many other animals, they're just really Velcroed at the hip, as I often say, about my dogs to me. They're really in touch with our feelings and emotions. I mean, we know they're used for therapy to cheer people up. They can sniff out cancers as well as bombs and drugs. So they're really tied into people. And it's important for us to do a reality check for ourselves once in a while, just like you would if you had kids around the house and something bad was going on. You knew you have to put on a happy face for the kids. Well, that applies to our dogs too. And probably some of the best things you can do if the dog is healthy enough to do it is for both of you to get some kind of physical activity together. Get those adrenaline and endorphins going together. I always say, and I learned this when I took my best buddy Haiku and I used to go to sunrise boot camp together, and a tired dog is a good dog. And maybe a tired person is a good, well-adjusted person too. So doing something physical together is great for both of you, and it really can put, getting out in fresh air away from people, can be really an uplifter as well. But it's important to tune in. I mean, I see pets Now it was wonderful. A lot of people were fostering pets, or they were having more time at home with their dogs. And now some of them may be heading back to work. So, if you don't have family members that are still home, I say really seek out a professional pet sitter. And I do put that word professional in front, because you want somebody who knows what to do if something wrong happens. There's nothing wrong with the kid down the street, but if there's an emergency, if the dog has his paw on that walk, is that kid going to know what to do? So, have somebody come in and walk them during the day, or spend time with them.
And that to you, you just made me just popped in my head right when you said that kid down the street, because right now people are trying to save a lot of money, and I've heard more than once of people letting the neighbor kid walk the dog. Aside from something can go wrong just as far as obedience wise, but the dog, like you said, a porcupine can pop out of somewhere. The dog can be injured. There's so many different possibilities, but. How old, then with that said, how old do you have to be in order to take your classes?
Well, I have had children, maybe I should call them preteens, 12-year-olds do rather well on up, obviously. But I do actually have a special recorded webinar just for kids.
Nice.
So that they can learn a lot of the basics. I've got a book, Pet First Aid for Kids, and sure, a lot of it does say go get a parent or go get an adult, but it does give them enough skills to empower them, and at least to be on the lookout for certain things, and maybe walk their parents even through some of the tips and techniques.
I love that.
So, it's just a matter of, the only reason I haven't really had anybody younger than 12 in a full class is, it's usually 4 to 5 hours. It's, a lot of concentration and, paying attention for a while. So if a kid is so inclined at a younger age, I'm all for them, learning. Even the adults, a lot goes in one ear and has to come out the other, so they, refresh often. Because if you don't use it, you lose it, and that's the way it will be with some of these skills. And that day that you do need it, you want to be fresh on them.
So can a person join you and you teach them and turn this into a career? Can this be, or is this like strictly like a part-time job for someone? Or can someone say, hey, you know what, I love what you're doing, from the medical industry, I'm from whatever industry, and I want to become certified? Is this a great career option for someone?
Oh, I think it's an awesome one, because like I kind of mentioned, I used to be in California, and a couple of years ago we made a cross-country move, and in so doing, my eyes were even opened more. I mean, I kind of always knew it, but about how many communities just don't have access to this training. And granted, I have a lot of recorded webinars on my website that people can, view from home. But the point is, I really want to teach the next generation of pet first aid instructors and animal caregivers. So yes, I'm doing that regularly, training people in different parts of the country to go off and then, take it to the next level. I'm giving them the basic skills and techniques, and giving them teaching tips as well, but wanting them to then take this back to their communities and help them to then take this back to their communities.
Is this a true stat? What I'm reading, 9 out of 10 dogs and cats will experience an emergency at some point in time in their lives?
It is, and I mean, granted, it might be that reactive feasting, or it could be, a pet that goes unconscious and goes in cardiac arrest. So it can be different levels, but when an emergency happens to your precious dog, it's an emergency. And like I just mentioned before, the first thing I always tell people is, take a deep breath, count to 10, hug a tree, whatever it is you want to do. But when you get in that panic mode, not only are you making your pet panic too, but you typically get what's called an adrenaline dump. And you need to process that adrenaline because it makes your legs not work very well, or your brain. And you need to just collect yourself for that moment, and then put together all of those skills you've learned and act efficiently and effectively for your dog.
Well, that's a huge challenge too, to stay calm in such a super stressful situation where your animal is in distress. I remember one time, it was a dog. He had swallowed something just the right way where it got lodged in his mouth, and he couldn't close his mouth, and he was barking, and he was still barking and growling. And even this was probably like year 8 or 9 into so I'm not a rookie, but I'm not a veteran, but I remember That was a huge deal, seeing a dog. 'Cause most people have never seen a dog in distress. When you see a dog in complete distress, especially with the paws and mouth, I always tell people that if you have a dog in your life, you'll be very lucky to avoid something getting stuck in your paw, which is pulling anything out of their paw, nails, tacks, glass, or anything in the paw, or they get something in their mouth that gets lodged. I don't know which one is the worst distress. Have you had to do it either or, paws or mouths, like lodging in the mouth or paws?
Yeah, I mean, actually, both. I've bandaged up for a cut paws, and I've done the Heimlich-like maneuver on dogs on many occasions. Actually, that was how I was brought to train Oprah Winfrey's staff. Her dog, Gracie, her white golden retriever, unfortunately passed away from getting too small of a ball. I think the retriever got the ball that belonged to the Cocker Spaniel, and the person that was with the dog at the time, tried to help, but just kind of reached in and actually pushed the ball farther. And I know they tried as fast as they can to get that doggy to the vet. He just didn't make it in time. So shortly after that, I was brought into her home to teach her staff what to do whenever it happens, and they would have me come back every couple of years to refresh, because she never wanted that to happen again. And it really is. It's like you're talking about how awful it is to see that happen, but by going through a class, practicing the skills on a stuffed animal, watching me demonstrate, it really does give you a sense of confidence so that you can react. I'm not going to say to Ariana that you're not going to have a meltdown after your dog has an issue, but the point is to hold it together to help him, pass him off to the vet, and then go have your meltdown. And
that's easier said than done, though. So I can only imagine. So did you get a chance to meet Oprah?
You know what? Every time I've been there, she wasn't there. So no, I didn't. But she has a lovely place.
That's still though. You got to make it to the queen of talk shows. What a phenomenal! I got a chance to meet her once. I begged my friend, I want to meet her because he worked for her forever. And I remember getting there, and I'm a talkative person. Everyone knows that knows me, and I was silent. I couldn't even open my mouth. He's like, "What happened?" Later on, afterwards, he's like, "What happened?" I was like, I couldn't say anything.
I mean, she's done such amazing things for people that it just really melts my heart how she cares about her dogs. So
she loves her dogs.
Makes her extra special in my book.
Well, and the fact that you were chosen and picked to train, because that's a big deal. Because my mentor, Cesar Milan, was her trainer. So she takes her dog serious, and she takes who she picks to train her dog serious, which explains the 6-page resume that I have been stalking you on. I want to ask you a couple of questions here, because Homeland Security, one of their headquarters are based here in Oak Brook, Illinois. And I'm just always fascinated with those because they're in the same office as in one of our company's office, our software company. So whenever I go there, those guys I try to make a joke with them. They're always so intense. They're kind of fun killers, right? So they're always trying to make a joke with them on the elevator. I never can get them to joke. But how did you get involved with Homeland Security? That's a big deal.
I have to say, once again, they found me. I was very fortunate. I mean, I guess what I'm doing, made an impact with somebody who got a bug in their ear. And, I'm sure they did their research and they probably talked to several people, in this career field. It was a number of years ago, but they wanted, some special tips. They were writing a handbook for their canine handlers at the border in particular. And I know they used a picture of me doing rescue breathing on my dog who was an Akita Border Collie named Rex at the time. And, I worked with them getting some of the techniques and protocol in place for the book.
That's a huge deal. I mean, just seeing those guys, clearly, you're a great person and happy and positive person because you made it through two of the toughest security companies in the world the Winfrey Empire.
Boy, I hadn't thought about it that way. You gave me a new perspective for today.
Hey, you're the most trusted person in the world. You're touching Oprah's dog and hanging out with Homeland Security. What more can you ask for? That's a big deal.
So well, you know, it's all about the pets. And my 15-year-old dog just came here to curl at my feet. And, you know, just senior dogs have such a special, you know, part of my heart. They really are so amazing.
That's your Akita.
Yes, I call him a chiquita because he has a little chow in him too, but his name is Haiku. I would put him on, but he just went under. He's having a little trouble walking at 15, but he's still a happy boy. And, you know, each of my dogs has led me to a different path. And my senior dogs have led me to, I think you mentioned that I'm currently the president of the board of the Gray Muzzle Organization. And what we do is we give out grants to rescues and shelters across the country for their senior dog programs to help senior dogs get their teeth cleaned or masses removed or special adoptions, or even to help communities keep dogs in the homes they already have. Wow. And I'm just so proud of that because senior dogs are really, you know, the light of my life. Sometimes, you know, we're, as Americans, we're a throwaway society, whether it's older people, older things, pets. And it's just so important that people take a look at older dogs because they're, I always say with an older dog, what you see is what you get. They're grown into their paws. They're grown into their personality. You can't pull one of these things, but like some people do, they adopt a German Shepherd puppy and say, "Oh, I didn't know he was going to get this." With a senior dog, you know how big he's going to be.
Wow.
And you still have so much love to give. And a senior dog at 7 is very different from a senior dog at 15. But I'm so happy to say at 15, mine is still going strong.
And that's such an art in itself, just dealing with senior dogs. That's an art in itself because they have special needs. And a lot of times people give up on senior dogs. And that's a big reason to also learn CPR for your pet. What would you say for a brand new puppy owner as motivation to take a pet CPR class? That I tell everyone they should definitely do, because that's something you don't want to be in a late night situation. Because what's the reason why, and what's the reason why they should do it? Because they might experience this for sure. So if you can fill in those two blanks, like why they should do it, because they might experience this for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you know, a puppy in particular is going to get into trouble, and they chew, and they put things in their mouths that they shouldn't, and that can be something that causes physical pain or that's ingested and is a poison. They're going to be curious going into places, so they need to learn their manners. We all need to have some parameters in life, and then you need to learn to do what you can when the worst happens. I always tell everybody, get down on all fours and look at your life from your pet's perspective. Anything they can't see with their incredible noses, they might be able to sniff out. And if it smells good enough, they're going to be curious enough to get into it. And it may not be the best thing for them. And whether it's CPR or dog training or, you know, anything else, because you were talking about, you know, during this era, like with pet sitters, it's hard for people to cough up the funds to do a lot of this stuff. However, you have to look at it. If you don't get your dog trained, you may spend more money on vet bills and household repairs.
Amen.
So
amen. You know what? You just made me think about CPR and training is preventive. Because one, if they train them, they might not be in that situation. Because you just made me think about this probably happens at least 10 times a year where the dog grabs to the prescription bottle and they start running around playing dodge dog. And as you're chasing them, they're just munching faster. You know, so number one, train your dog so you're not even in that situation. But then number two, I would say if you are in a situation where the dog now, because I've heard both. The dog has squeezed open the bottle pops open, they just start eating away. And I've heard also too where the dog has just digested and swallowed the entire bottle. What does a person do in that situation? Because I'm thinking Porter, the Portuguese water dog, all black dog, ate my clients, went to the grandma's purse, specifically targeted the prescription, ate the whole bottle and everything, and that was like, she paid about, it was like 10 grand, it was something just ridiculous, off the chain as far as the pricing. So once they've done it, how can I get that bottle out?
Okay, good question. And, you know, it doesn't have to be prescription. Over the counter can be just as deadly. Xylitol in gum, chocolate. There are so many things. It doesn't have to be just meds. So you have to kind of know what it is. But, you know, there's all these places like Poison Helpline, as well as your own emergency vet that can help you through. But typically with dogs, depending on what it is, we might try to induce vomiting, and what we use for that is fresh, bubbly, 3% hydrogen peroxide. It has been known to irritate tummies a little bit, but if you need to get something out, that generally does the job very effectively. The only thing is, if it was a caustic object like a cleaner or, you know, something ammonia based, then you don't want to bring it back up. It's better to dilute with getting the dog to drink large quantities of water or even some non-fat plain yogurt and get him to the vet quickly, because if something burned on the way down, it's going to burn again on the way up, and then there's that possibility of aspirating it into the lungs. But if it's, you know, food or a lot of medications, very often before you get to the vet, they'll even suggest you try to induce vomiting with hydrogen peroxide. If it doesn't, I've seen it work in 30 seconds to 5 minutes. If it doesn't work in 5 minutes, in most cases, you can give the dog a second dose. But after that, if for some reason it doesn't work, still get to the vet. But it does work rather effectively. You just want to be careful that you know a little bit more about that medical history. And all, just confer with your vet or the Poison Helpline on the phone first. But that's generally the thing to do. I've had to do it a few times, and it really, really works.
So get the hydro. So just what are you doing? Are you just taking the bottle and just putting it down their throats, or are you taking?
Well, you want to do the right quantity. It's typically a tablespoon for every 10 to 15 pounds the pet weighs. And you either put it in a syringe or a turkey baster or an eye dropper and dribble it on the back of the throat. You don't want to really put it in food, because if you're trying to induce vomiting, you don't want chunks of food going down that are going to come back up.
So that's some really quick thinking then, because you're already freaking out because the dog has digested the bottle, right? And then you're thinking, you have to think, okay, where's my hydro at peroxide?
But if it's all in your pet first aid kit together, you've done half the trick.
Yes. Good
morning.
Good morning, Tammy. How are you?
Yes, I'm fine. I just want. Good morning, Denise.
Good morning.
Valuable information. I did have a question I wanted to get in before Toriano ended his podcast. I'm his aunt, and I happen to be a registered nurse. And I did have a question for you regarding CPR. So I was discussing this with my nephew earlier. Since I am a registered nurse, and obviously I have to maintain, you know, current certifications for CPR. I also have advanced cardiac life support certification. But I was wondering, with having those qualifications already, would I need to take a CPR class for dogs, or would I apply the same principles with having human CPR qualifications? Like, would that be equivalent to having CPR certification?
Right. No, and that's an excellent question, Tammy. And it's interesting because I have a lot of human nurses right now that are actually going through the instructor training with me, and they're excellent because they have a lot of the basic background. And, you know, basically the protocol is the same, but some of the techniques differ, typically because dogs walk on 4 legs, you know, and we walk on 2. So, so things are set up a little differently. One of the biggest things is we tend to do compressions from the side, but we have 3 different hand placements depending on the shape of the dog's chest in order to most effectively squeeze. We used to only have 1, and you know that probably could still work, where you landmark to find the heart, but we found on the bigger, square-chested dogs, it's better to find the dome of the chest, the highest, widest part of the chest, because it's a little bit easier for us to penetrate that chest wall, and we're squeezing more on the aorta, distributing the blood and oxygen throughout the body, whereas in some of the other techniques, we're squeezing more on the ventricles. Then there's the barrel-chested dogs, you know, the bulldogs, the mastiffs, the St. Bernards, that we do better actually putting them on their back and doing it a little bit more human style. But the rescue breathing is almost opposite. On humans, we pinch off the nose and breathe in the mouth. Whereas on our dogs, we seal off the mouth and breathe directly into the nostrils to get the air more effectively into the airway. Because if we blow in here, it's just going to go out the flues. You know, their smile lines come farther around their faces. So, you know, there are some subtle differences, but I'm sure you'd catch on very quickly with your background.
Okay, because that's what I was kind of thinking, that it probably would be some differences, mainly because you're dealing with you know, legged creatures versus, you know, two.
Well, yes, and they have much more flexible rib cages, and then, you know, again, they come in a lot different sizes. Of course, though, I mean, I'm sure you know, for babe infants and, you know, yeah, exactly. But one of the Yeah, the only thing I was going to add to that is, because this has been a question, and I've been trying to share this with all of my students lately, be it with animals going a lot of places where there might be defibrillators, people often ask me, well, should I try a defibrillator on my dog if he goes into cardiac arrest? And the best information I can give you on that is no at this time, in that typically dogs and also cats do not go into shockable rhythms. They typically go into asystole and pulseless electrical activity. They do not go into shockable rhythms, but of course we never know that until they're hooked up to EKG. So manual CPR and rescue breathing is what is advisable, and getting them to the bed as quickly as possible. Now, the one story I did relay, the lady actually resuscitated her pet. That doesn't happen that often. Most of my students and people that have done CPR continue those chest compressions all the way to the bed until they can hand the pet off. But, you know, sometimes people are lucky, but even if that doggy gets up, wags his tail, and licks your face, you get to the vet, because CPR is not a cure. It's just a means to keep that blood circulating. And when you stop, it probably will stop in most cases.
Okay, Denise, that did lead me to another question regarding CPR, because, you know, like in the past, the typical CPR was always, you know, doing the breathing in addition, you know, to the chest compressions. But because they recognize that a lot of lay people, when they're on the street, they're not willing to breathe into someone else's mouth. So
especially not now.
Exactly. And so the recommendation is just to do compressions for that reason, because they wouldn't want the person, the victim, to be deprived of CPR altogether just because the person is reluctant, you know, to breathe into someone else's mouth. So they are recommending just chest compressions for the lay person. So would that same thing apply to a person who wouldn't be necessarily compelled to breathe into, you know, their, I mean, I'm sure a person wouldn't mind doing it with their own dog, just like a person would mind breathing into their own family member's mouth, but might be reluctant to do it in a stranger's mouth. If a person was going to do CPR on someone else's dog, would the same principle apply as far as even just doing compressions if they didn't feel comfortable, you know, doing the breathing for a dog?
Can I answer that with a yes and no? Basically, what I would say is have one of those like mannequin shields. It's a piece of plastic with gauze over it, and put it over the dog's nose. And here's why, Tammy. There are less things we can catch from a dog than we can catch from another person. That's, you know, one of the things in my books and my classes I try to go over zoonotic diseases so that people understand there aren't that many things we really can catch from a dog. So it's safer. And secondly, although by doing the compressions, you're circulating whatever oxygen is already in the body, They haven't come up with any particular number or amount of time it takes with pets. My understanding for people is that the typical person has about 10 minutes worth of oxygen in their body at any given time if you keep it circulating, but they haven't come up with that number. And typically with pets, it takes us longer to get them to medical professionals. With a person, we're going to get on 911 and hopefully in 3 to 5 minutes or something, you know, an ambulance is going to come, put them on compressed oxygen, maybe, you know, give them some, you know, a shot of something, or at least administer CPR, maybe even get, you know, defibrillator or, you know, anything going. But with the dog, it's typically us that finds the dog, us that has to initiate treatment, and us that also has to transport. So there can be more delay. So I really encourage people to do the breathing and the chest compressions if they can. Now, sometimes there could be a bad injury, hit by a car, or even an animal fight where the face is kind of messed up and you might not be able to do it. So by all means, doing compressions is better than not doing anything. But especially if, you know, any time is going by, just like with us, in 3 minutes, brain cells do start to die. So we want to get that all going as quick as we can.
Denise, you said a phrase, because animals don't have synchronized rhythm. You said, so was one phrase you said a while back.
Oh, they typically don't go into shockable rhythm arrest.
Shockable rhythm. What?
So that the defibrillators don't typically help them.
Can you explain that to the listeners? Shockable rhythm?
Triano, that's another whole course probably for someone.
Well, but just, yeah, I was just going to say, in simplest terms, typically when a heart goes into arrest, there are 4 different names for how that heart stopped, whether it was, you know, electrical impulses or what was it that caused the heart to stop. And typically in dogs and cats, their heart stops in a manner that if you put that defibrillator on, it doesn't do anything to help. So there are some cases where it could, but it's, you know, it's rare that that's the type of rhythm or arrest rhythm that they would have. So, and nobody knows until the pet's hooked up to an EKG. So that's what I'm just saying.
Denise, about defibrillators is that the ones that they have, like that lay people can use, it will tell you if it's a shockable rhythm, so that they're not wasting their time when they put the defibrillator, you know, on the. And I would imagine it would do the same for an animal if you were going to try to.
You know, it's funny. I'm not sure if it will, because I've called a few of the defibrillator companies and I haven't really gotten a direct answer from them. I got more information when I took, you know, my advanced training through Cornell. So, you know, I don't know. That may have changed. I don't want to be unfair. I haven't checked with them for a couple years now. But I think their testing just really hasn't been on animals. And, you know, I don't even know that the hair might cause some situations too, the fur on the bodies. Depending on, you know,
issue, because just like hair on the chest, like we have to, you know, if it's excessive hair, we have to shave the hair before we put the pads on humans. So I would imagine that would be, you know, a problem on an animal as well, because they have even more hair to deal with.
Denise, would you recommend, is that overkill, a person actually having a defibrillator in their home?
I am so sorry. I'm so sorry, Toriana. I just didn't hear you that time.
No, I was asking the question about having the machine, the defibrillator in your actual home.
No. Well, I mean, you know, if it's useful for humans, but, you know, typically, like what we're saying is it really isn't, you know, going to come into need with your pets. So not for that. You know, there's probably other things like having a good pet first aid kit and just spending time on your training and refreshing can be, you know, a lifesaver. Because it doesn't have to always be the older pet. It can be a younger pet that gets into trouble and needs help.
What would you say would be the, I mean, I have my own in my mind, like the number one thing, which I would say pets chewing something and getting lodged. What would be your number one?
I was going to say choking is probably the biggest deal. And, you know, problems with some statistics with our animal friends is we just don't have one national database we can call. And every time, you know, I do the doggy Heimlich, I can't, you know, put a check mark in a column to know how effective it is. But, you know, over the years between writing and talking to pet owners and all, and veterinarians, I have found that really very, I shouldn't say very few, but less dogs die of choking than you would think of if somebody's there that's actively trying to help. It's the person
Good job,
or that, you know, just, or the pet that's home alone when he chokes on something that passes away. Most of the time, if we're there, we're either able to dislodge it through giving him that great big air hug of a Heimlich maneuver, or keep that airway open long enough to get him to veterinary help. One of the scary things that people don't think about is that 500,000 animals die every year from house fire. And some of those they start themselves. And, you know, my two quick little tips about that are to stand by your man. Not the old Tammy Wynette song, Stand By Your Man, but stand by your pan when you're cooking, because a lot of us are trying to multitask too much. And we leave things on the stove, or we turn handles out that the pet can jump on and knock over. And the other thing is tidiness. If you've got the kids' homework or a dish towel or anything near the stove, and you've got a curious dog that counter surfs and jumps up and can actually, you know, turn on a stove knob and bumps those papers, or there's countless towels there. Obviously, you have a real serious situation quickly. You know, everybody has to make their own choices in life, but, you know, I have some friends that actually train their pets to just stay outside of the kitchen area. I mean, they can be very close and they'll throw them treats and say, but that's, you know, this is the line, not to come in the kitchen just simply for that reason. But it is something, you know, really serious to keep in mind too.
That's a great point. I had a client a few years back where the doggy set the home on fire because he knocked over the candles. So dogs and candles, people should be very aware of also.
Candles and anybody people should be aware of, because that's so easy. People in general can be careless with candles, so it's...
yeah, especially
people leave pizza boxes on the stove.
Well, especially too with the candles too, because now they have all the scented candles. So if you have a scented candle that smells yummy, you know, for the dog, and the dog is sniffing and they knock over the candle, or another thing too, even if they don't set the house on fire. My client, her dog, she had this huge big candle that the dog knocked over, and the dog had all this candle wax in its fur, which was a huge vet mess for her also. So dogs get into stuff pretty fast. I tell people, I mean, the safest thing I would tell people, until you have a dog that's completely trained, I keep them on a little leash in the house, like how you have the little backpacks that moms have that attach to the little kid and is attached to mom's waist. For the first, my mentor, Ed Frawley, of Learberg Kennel, he said first 3 years of a dog's life, keep them close on a leash. And that seems excessive, but you're talking about an animal that can get involved in a lot of different things, can set the house on fire. One vet bill, the Portuguese water dog, I remember that vet bill for sure was around 10 grand when he was never really properly, left a lot of neurological damage too, because the medication that he had got a hold of. I mean, dogs can get entangled. Never leave your dog outside on a leash, because I've had dogs that have almost had their own clients have tattered their dog, and the one dog, his back hind leg had been wrapped in the leash. They had a wire, it wasn't even a leash, it was like one of those tie-outs. So he was so entangled.
On the table.
Right, he was so entangled in the cable,
right,
that it had cut off the circulation.
It almost amputate.
Oh, it did amputate, because then the client was, I'll never forget, because the client called me up and said, "Can you come over? My dog's tingling." They're like, "Why are you calling?" That was their first reaction, but the dog was pretty, and the dog was in complete distress too, which a lot of people have never seen their dogs in complete distress. I've seen also too, I tell people, if you're going to use, I don't like wire crates at all. Use airline carriers. because I've seen dogs, and if you are going to use a wire crate, take their leash off, because there's been so many situations where people have come home and the dog has just figured out the right way to get the collar attached to the wire crate and have choked themselves out. And that's a terrible thing too, of seeing a dog in distress when they're caught on something, because you have to go in there and get them off. And even your own pet sometimes can be reactive to biting.
Well,
and surprisingly, Toriano,
I heard a case not too long ago of a little dog, and in this hot weather, he was trying to soak up the air conditioning in his house.
And it actually came from floor vents. Some people have the floor vents.
Yep.
And he was laying on that floor vent, and his tag went down in that vent and got caught. And when he tried to get up, he literally choked himself. A bigger dog might be able to pull that whole vent out of the floor.
Yep.
The little dog choked himself. So,
and I don't know why.
Although tags are important, you gotta make sure they can't get caught on anything.
And when you say air conditioning, just went through my mind of antifreeze too, because antifreeze is sweet to animals. So keep antifreeze. There's so many. Well, people should just read about.
Yeah, we always covered that when we talked about cold weather injuries, or it just tastes sweet to them. Wildlife and pets die every year from antifreeze poisoning, and we've been trying for decades to get them to put in a bittering agent. And I think it was in 2013, the manufacturers of antifreeze came up with a voluntary agreement. I'm not sure what that means, that they can or they don't have to put in bittering agent. So, so it's really up to us to make sure that's sealed up, that if there are any drips on the garage floor, that we get them cleaned up, because as little as a teaspoon for a cat or a tablespoon for a dog can be fatal. It doesn't take much. And they may not just lap it up. They may walk through it, and then groom it off and get it in them.
They'll drink it fast.
It causes acute kidney failure.
Denise, before we close, Tammy had a question. So she's interested in your class, or if anyone is interested, how do they move forward? No, I said if anyone's interested in your classes and taking your classes, how do they?
Oh, goodness.
Here we go. Are you there?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, if you can always email me at petsafetycrusader@gmail.com. The website petsafetycrusader.com has all of my classes listed, and I have first aid classes for dogs, for cats, for birds, for rabbits. I have senior pet care classes. I have disaster preparedness pet classes, so you can make all the plans you need in case you have some type of emergency and need to evacuate or hunker down at home. And then, like I said, I have the dog and cat pet first aid class for kids also available. So they're all on my website at petsafetycrusader.com. Some are recorded that you do on your own. Some you can meet up with me live via Zoom, and you can watch me demonstrate. I can see you practice, and we can learn together.
And I would say for people just to give you a call and reach out to you, schedule an appointment to do a Zoom, because I can't even get through this hour. We're over an hour, and I'm not even through even half of your resume. You have, I mean this, I've not seen anyone with such a beast of a resume as if you've been doing this your entire life, and this is your second career, and you went in and got a lot of stuff done. So I want to, we always close the show with asking the most serious question ever, putting you on the spot right now. Are you ready for the question?
I'm ready.
All right. You are our 6th show of our new season, right? And we want to know, will you be the 6th show of our 2nd season, which would be January 6, 2021. Will you help us kick 2021 off properly?
I'd be delighted, and I'd really like to kick 2020 away, so I'd love to kick 2021 into full gear.
Hey, and that's how we're going to start. No, I want to bring, because what you're doing is so, I can't even get it out, because when people finally call me,
Well, you know what? feels good. Before this, I was a publicist, and there's nothing wrong with making people famous, but it doesn't do a lot for your own ego. But you know, but really helping animals just, you know, heals your heart and nourishes your soul. And you know, I guess I can't really say it's work, because it's you know, a gift of love to be able to help other people help their pets like I've been able to help mine.
Well, and two, I would tell people, because our style of training, typically we're not the prevention, we're the cure. They call me when it's all messed up or when the dog has done something. And one of the big reasons why people call me is because the dog ate the rat poison, the dog ate the poison, the dog ate the cake, the dog did something to create this huge vet bill. The dog ate the t-shirt again, the dog ate the whatever, and now they're like, all right, I'm tired of spending money on vet bills and medical. I need to train the dog. So I think too, if people reach out to you.
Well, that's it. And sometimes people come to me. Sometimes they've been very, I almost want to say psychic, in that they've come to me weeks before something happens, but I've had more students say, I'm here in your class because my dog just died of bloat, or I just watched my dog choke to death.
Or, you know, he was hit by a car.
Or, you know, he was hit by a car and I didn't know what to do. So it's always better to, you know, be prepared and have a plan A and a B, and to be caught unprepared, especially when it's, you know, our precious fur child.
And especially during these just complete unprecedented times. I mean, and anything can go on. I mean, whether you're no matter where you are in the country, have a plan for your animal, your furry friend. Tammy, I think you were trying to say something before. You want to say something in closing here?
Oh, no, yeah, I'm definitely going to get in touch with Denise, but I was going to say that, yeah, you don't ever really know when something may come up as an emergency with your dog, because I did experience that with my dog Chance. Probably a little over a year ago, he was eating his dog food and he started choking, which that happens to him occasionally when he eats really quickly. So I didn't pay much attention to it, because he usually can get it up himself, you know, like he'll keep gagging until he, you know, throws up whenever he got caught in his throat. But this particular time, he was gagging and it wasn't coming up, and I could tell he was actually getting weak. And I actually had to do the Heimlich on him, and he spit out the big chunk of dog food that got caught in there. But if I didn't know how to do the Heimlich, he just would have been gone, because there was no way he was getting it out on his own that time. So I just wanted to point out that, yeah, you don't ever really know when an emergency may come up with your dog, just like with, you know, humans. So it's always best.
You're so right, Tammy. And one of the first students I had that ever wrote me, you know, a note back afterwards said something just to the effect that there's nothing as rewarding as knowing, you know, you were able to save a little dog's life, and that they gave you the licks and kisses just like they knew and understood that you were there to help. And it was for a choking incident, you know, the same thing. So that is really common. Pets scarf food. And yes, sometimes they can, you know, pop it up, but other times they can't. So it's good to know the Heimlich, which are abdominal thrusts, and then we also go into chest thrusts, which are really pressing on the lungs in case, you know, the other one isn't working, but the abdominal thrust really, you know, typically does the job. So I'm glad you have a happy ending.
Yay. Cool. Well,
Thank you so much, Denise, for all your...
Oh, it was my pleasure. It was a joy to talk with both of you. And I just, you know, anytime I can talk dog, young dog, old dog, middle dog, happy dog. That's what it's all about.
Yes.
Denise, I want to thank you. You got me pumped up, because this is such a big deal. I can't overemphasize how big of a deal pet medical safety is a big deal. And as you said, every year so many pets die. But go out there, find Denise, go to her website. Tell us your website one more time again.
PetSafetyCrusader.com.
Yay. And we're going to bring Denise back again before January. But for sure, a big, huge debut show is going to be January 6, 2021. I'm your host, Toriano Sanzoni, the Wolfkeeper, broadcasting live from Wolfkeeper University. My Aunt Tammy coming in as a co-host for Chanel Nell, wherever you are. Tyrone Scott out there rocking with the dogs somewhere. Rejoice. And to Dana, the beast who put together this entire show. Thank you so much for all your love. Go out, love your dog. And remember, there's only one alpha, and that's you. Peace and love.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ciao.
Thank you.